a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 do.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're coming from us, good day. It's so wonderful to be with you again, our Spirit Cafe show, where we have conversations of courageous and bold topics. And before I introduce you to our wonderful guest today, I would just like to acknowledge that we work, live, and play on the historical and traditional territory of many First Nations. And as we gather from many places on Turtle Island, we as settlers are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years, including the Métis, Inuit, and all other Indigenous peoples. Also acknowledging that as we continue to grow and expand on these lands, there is still unresolved and dangerous inequality and discrimination towards our Black, Indigenous, people of color, and 2S LGBTQ plus family. By making these acknowledgements, we strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. We are one. So our wonderful guest today is Angela Punky Stultz. And Angela is driven by her spiritual relationship with the Creator to facilitate the process for vulnerable individuals, especially women and youth, to empower themselves. She has combined a strong faith in the redemptive potential of every individual with multifaceted community development approaches and a strong team effort to make a difference in people's lives and their communities. Angela earned a bachelor's degree in social work and a master's degree in management studies, majoring in organizational development. Angela is the author of Signs and Wonders, Sojourn in the Innercity, an award finalist in the American Best Book Fest 2019 competition, which is the nonfiction category. And Signs and Wonders is a collection of 10 true stories of people's hope and resilience, tangible interventions and triumphs, and seeming miracles in the face of trials and despair. Amelia Disappears is her first children's Caribbean storybook and is dedicated to her grandchildren. Angela has several published works on the social divide in Jamaica, has presented internationally on her research, and she's the recipient of various other awards as well, including the Wooden Shoe Award from the Netherlands Embassy, an award usually made to government representatives, as well as the Prime Minister's Award for Community and Youth Development. And I'm just in awe, Angela, when I read all these wonderful things that you have done and continue to do. Welcome to our show, and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Cheryl and Barbara, Reverend Barbara, for inviting me to be a part of this combination of beautiful spirit. So thank you. It's an honor.
Thank
Oh, well,
you.
it's our privilege for sure. And I just, want to start with the idea of empowering women. I think we all know that although women make up the majority of the population, we still are treated as a minority. Which is kind of interesting. My teenage daughter came home one day and said, "I've heard the most ridiculous thing." And I went, "What's that?" And she says, "Women are a minority." I said, "Keep to that vision. We'll change it."
Yes. Yes.
So tell us about your work.
Okay. So really, thanks for having me. My work is mainly with women, marginalized women, women who um, have been even further set back because of the multiple identities that we wear. As marginalized women, we are at the lower rung of societal ladder. And so at times our voices are not heard.
Yes.
And so it is, for me, it is important that we are heard, that we are represented in all facets of life, as women who are wear so many roles and so many different caps in nurturing and guiding and politics and being a part of society. So it's helping facilitating that process, that women, that our voices are heard and we're listened to.
I think that's one of the things that I've noticed is that as an ally, that I'm not heard. That when I speak up for someone who cannot speak up for themselves, I get told that it's basically none of my business and they either need to step forward or nothing will happen. And that's really upsetting to me because I had a situation with a Muslim Somali girl who was a good friend of my daughter's, and they were riding the subway together and were verbally attacked and spit on and harassed. And of course, this young girl who was 15, she can't she can't step up and say anything for herself. So we did. I phoned the police and they just went, well, if she won't stand up and say something, I went, but my daughter was part of the group. So surely she can speak to this. And they went, no, she can't. How do we deal with that? Any thoughts?
Well, first, I really must acknowledge and congratulating you in well, not that you need to be congratulated in how you nurture your child, but oftentimes we, in nurturing and guiding, we don't understand the importance of helping them to be part of the change.
Yeah.
And so I commend you, your daughter, in knowing that for those who voice is not that they can't stand up, it's not that they do not have a voice, it's that society has been programmed not to listen to that voice.
Yeah.
And so the importance of allies and real allies who understand that and is able to say, I am speaking on behalf of this person, and it's important for you to listen. And the work, it's never, unfortunately, it doesn't go away. We have successes, we have events that we can speak to that were successful, but it's a continued process and a continued work. It's hard work, and it must be continued. It must be taught to our children so that the generation that is coming along be part of the generational change, because they are aware of what is happening. They are not just on the outside looking in to say, well, that does not affect me. It's my story. It's their baggage. But understanding the importance of allyship and pushing and advocating for that. So it doesn't stop. And it starts at that level, the parents, for generational transformation.
Well, and when I spoke to this young girl a couple of months later, I was driving her home from an event at our home, and I'm driving her home, and she said, "You called the police?" And I went, "Of course I did. That should never happen." She goes, "It happens all the time." And I said, "Honey, that should never happen to you." And she was like, like it was a non-event, and I was mortified by that.
Mhm.
She was 15 years old when that attack happened, and she takes it as normal day to day. I was, yeah.
And that's unfortunate because it has become normalized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Abuse, whether it is domestic or abuse or how society treats you. You
Yeah.
walk into a store as a woman and as a Black woman, and everyone turns around to help you, has become so normalized that you have learned how to deal with it and cope
Mhm.
with it. Because in responding to that, you run the risk. It's a balance between standing up for myself and being assertive or being labored as the angry Black woman.
Mhm.
And so we wear that hat and having always to negotiate, navigate the space that we're in to know when is it that we stand up or when is it that we just walk away. Um,
Mhm.
so it's a normalized thing that uh, marginalized women, um, racialized women interface with and have learned how to cope with it.
Mhm.
That's unfortunate that you have to learn to cope with it. I mean, the rest of us should learn to wake up, to
Yeah.
begin to
It's a dual
recognize.
process.
Yeah.
uh,
I'm sitting here thinking about how we teach our children, how we bring up our children, and yes, making them allies and have the awareness. And then I think to myself, wouldn't it just be wonderful though if we could just teach them values and principles and to stand up for unfairness and not have to mention color and race and all that, but just generally, right? These are our values and principles, and it doesn't matter what color, what culture, where people come from. It's just that's not right. And when something's not right, and we have a role that we can play in standing up for someone, then we need to do so, like step forward. Do you think we'll ever get there? Oh my gosh.
Um,
I'm hoping.
we hope we hope to get there. Values matter. It is important to stand up, but color matters.
Yeah.
In the ideal world, we would like to think or believe that it should not matter one's race, it should not matter one skin tone, but it matters because
Mhm.
it informs the person who you are socializing with, how they respond to you.
Right.
And they see color. They
Yes.
see color. They see that I am Black. They hear
Mhm.
my accent that I am not Canadian.
Yes.
And they have decided that based on those identities, as a Black woman, as a migrant woman, a woman that's not here, and by default, women should be
Mhm.
treated in a certain way. They respond accordingly. And
Mhm.
so it is important for us to see color as
Yeah.
allies, because when we see color, we have a better understanding of our different
Right.
realities.
Yeah.
We don't share the same reality
No, we don't.
when we do the same thing.
Yes. That's true.
We,
Everything's an
so
we were
everything,
talking. It's an
yes,
illusion. Everything's an illusion, and it's all about perception. And
yes,
and yeah, Angela, I agree with you in that we need to be seen as individuals, as unique expressions of what we call the one power, one presence everywhere. And I think when you're talking about that, for me, it's about respecting who you are, respecting where you come from. That's a value, right? That's
yes,
respecting the environment you grew up in.
yes,
So, not meaning it in that sense, but more in the sense of that we have a different attitude towards it,
yes, yes,
right?
yes, yeah, yeah. Our socialization um, is different. And the fundamental thing here that I really want to say is that even among the same socialization, persons are treated. In the same culture, persons are treated different because of their race, because of their religion, because of the image that people have concluded about them when they show up.
Yeah.
When a Muslim woman shows up, regardless of her race, if she is in garb that is shows that she is not of the dominant religion, then she is treated different.
Yeah.
And so those differences have become normalized.
Yeah.
And they are oppressive. They are oppressive to women of all, transgender women, women, all women. It is oppressive.
Yeah.
It is even more oppressive when the woman is racialized from the BIPOC community, because then there are different layers of oppression based on that identity.
Right. Many layers too.
Yeah, I think anything, it was interesting. We were in a meeting yesterday where we're dealing with anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous racism, looking at changing our governance model to show up differently. And, it's interesting to think about the ways in which we as people like to separate. There's that idea of, I need to be better than somebody else, when the truth is we're all unique and special. But that's been pulled apart, and there's all this fear and storytelling from the media or wherever that is suggesting things that are frankly untrue, but that goes and changes how we view each other. Like fear has been put in. The gentleman who was leading our group yesterday was talking about the greatest number of deaths in gun violence, and asked, okay, who would that be? And we all went, oh, young Black men. No, middle-aged white men. But it's suicide. But there are more, if you just take it death by death, not percentage of the population, but death by death, there are more white men who kill themselves by gun than all the gun violence of anybody else. But we would never guess that.
No.
Not watching the news.
No.
This is why I don't watch the news, because frankly, it is giving a very specific storyline that is not factual, but is very editorialized and is held to, it's racializing people in a way that's very negative. Yes. And that's really unfortunate. Really unfortunate.
Hi, Fiona from Geneva. Great to see you.
Good to have you here, Fiona.
Always good to have you here. Fiona's one of our regular supporters. She comes often to listen to our show, and we're so grateful to have you here.
Hi, Serena. Wonderful to meet you.
There was you were talking about the gun violence and and that perception. I had a thought and it's gone.
Yeah.
You had a thought and disappeared.
It's gone.
And so in empowering, it's the importance of, as you mentioned earlier, Cheryl, of the voice, of being assertive in our identities. In our identities, in standing up for ourselves. And for me, the young Black woman who was not able to do that, one of the ways, when I said earlier, to cope with it, it means how do you respond? It doesn't mean being silenced.
No.
It doesn't mean losing your voice.
Yes.
It just means responding in a way that demands respect
Yes.
because you know who you are. And I
Yes.
want to use a word that Reverend Barbara used about us being unique miracles, you know, and
Absolutely.
because it is so important for us to know the spirit that lives within us and how
Yes.
unique and beautiful that person is, that
Yes.
spirit is, and being able to stand up.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Allah is important, but our voices must be heard.
must be heard.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, a couple of years ago, I did a training called, oh gosh, training of active bystanders. You know, bystanders who get what we watch and we get stuck. We don't know what to do in a situation. You know, bullying, anything like that. It's called training active bystanders.
Mhm.
And you know, part of that is, and it reminded me, Angela, when you're saying is that you know, even if you don't do something in that moment, you have to do something. You have to have that voice and use it. So you know, it could be standing up in front of you know, an audience, a crowd of people, and sharing that experience and what that was like for you. So you know, educating people. Things like that, even if it wasn't in the moment that there was a response, but saying, you know, I saw this and it was not okay. And, you know, I wasn't able to do something at the time because I was afraid or whatever the case may be, but then still being able to talk about that and let people know that this is happening and that it's not okay.
Yes. I
And
totally agree with that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I found with some of Genevieve's friends, especially young teenage girls who are Muslim, because of the way they've been raised, their parents actually won't allow them to speak out against powers that be. And I understand why, whether their immigration has been, you know, completely satisfied or who knows what the story is. But I think I want to see a change where, you know, a situation like happened with my daughter and her two friends, that she would be respected enough to stand up and say, here's what happened with the three of us on the subway, and be able to speak to that. Because my daughter walked away from that and went, two white cops, what do you expect? So now she has a disrespect also of the police service. And not all cops are bad, but there's enough of them doing stuff that is super questionable that we have to. I mean, there's so many areas we have to address. Where do we start, Angela? Where do we start?
We started good when we spoke about the media and how it projects the story.
That was my thought.
Yes, we start with two things. I think we started out in addressing the key problem, the media and the story that they put out. And we also looked at parenting and changing the generation that's coming forward to be standing up. So we are on the right track.
We're on our way.
I remembered my thought, Barbara. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
We were talking about the media, and I really believe that the media is not what it was ever set out to be.
True.
It has become really biased, and it has become sensationalized, dramatic. I listen to some of the words they use, and they'll use these, I don't know, is it an adjective, like to, you know, to just, you know, and I think to myself, oh my goodness, don't people see that? We have to stop watching the news so that they don't have a platform and they realize that we're not going to listen to it anymore. And that's going to take, I really think, I think we're only at the start of that movement of stopping to watch the news. But I think that's something that we really ought to be talking about as well, is, you know, by watching, we're giving them license to continue to do what they do.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. And I was trained as a journalist. That I went to college to become a journalist Now, this is going back quite a few years. Back in the day when they taught you, if you editorialized anything, you got a giant X on your paper. Didn't matter how good your research was. If you put opinion in there, you got a 0, flat out, plain and simple. And now it's all editorializing. It's all opinion. Trying to find some fact out of the news today, good luck.
Yeah.
It's not, it isn't happening. And I think, you're right. That's an important place. My daughter attends a French public school, which is actually near to where you work, Angela. And in that school, it is probably 50-50 BIPOC and white. And the teachers, probably the majority of them are people of color. And what's interesting to me is that the education that my daughter's received in history, she's in grade 12 now, she has never had a Black teacher teach history.
Wow.
And she said, how is that possible? Over half the teachers here are people of color. Like, why have I not had a Black teacher for history? Like that. But I'll give credit. In her English class this year, they read Kindred. And I just read it, and heart-wrenching. It's a fictionalized story, but based on historical fact.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant. It's brilliant, but really hard to read. But the kids were very engaged with it, which I'm really grateful to see. But you're talking about people who know, and, teachers, especially, these are teachers. Her school is from grade 7 to 12. And they had a teacher show up one day wearing a t-shirt that said, "All lives matter." And my daughter went to the principal and said, he has to take that off right now. And he goes, why? Because until Black lives matter, all lives don't matter. So he needs to remove the shirt.
Wow.
And the principal's going, well, yeah, go let him know. And she goes, excuse me, I'm a child. You're the principal. Make it happen. He goes, well, maybe he doesn't know. Maybe you need to educate him. And she's like, excuse me, he's married to a Black man, so he does know. And number 2, I'm sorry, I'm a child. I'm not here to educate the teacher. It's your job.
Yes.
But it's like all these little things going on that are not little unless you're a white person and don't notice.
Yeah. And it's the history, as we are pointing out. As a Black woman, we have a responsibility to tell our stories to our children, to tell our stories in villages, in group settings, as we know them, because nobody else is telling our story for us. As we speak, this is being wiped out.
Yeah.
For example, look at what is happening now in Florida, in them banning Eva the Rosa Parks story as a part of the history, in them trying to take out Black history. And so we have to advocate for those things as women. We have to teach our children our story and the importance of passing it on and talking about it so that it maintains its relevance, because it is, as I said, we live it on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
It's important.
Yeah.
We're going to go to a commercial break here, but this is getting very, very good. So I'm so grateful you're here, Angela and Cheryl. Wonderful to do this with you as always. So you're watching Spirit Cafe show on the New Thought Media Network, and we're going to go to a commercial break. We'll be right back, and stay tuned.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience, or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes, or being the star, let us bless our one. contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors and donors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, and all of our individual donors and sponsors. Thank you for being a part of the New Thought Media Network. Please come be you.
Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change.
And we're back.
Thank
Oh, my
you.
goodness. So now you've written some children's books, which interest me. Tell me about your books.
Okay, thank you again for being a part of this wonderful conversation. My first book, Signs and Wonders, is 10 stories, which include a story about woman power, about an abused woman who triumphed over her abuse and regained her independence and regained her voice. So it is 9 stories of the social intervention that we did in marginalized communities. And I thought that I would write about those stories because it can be used by social workers and spiritual leaders and so on to use that as another tool for intervention that is applicable to most situations where you have persons are trying to find their voice and are trying to find their independence.
Yeah.
And so on. So that is 10 stories. 9 of them actually are the stories. One of them is my story about myself growing up in a very poor community and how my grandfather raised me to have a voice. Because he was a very politically astute man, and he understood the struggles that I would face as not just as a Black woman, but as a dark-skinned Black woman, and how colorism, even within our race, is something that we have to respond to. And so my teaching and my political awareness of addressing and speaking out came from those experiences that my grandfather taught me as a child. So
Nice.
I write about those stories.
Mhm.
I entered it into the American Best Book competition in 2019. And among authors from all over the world, over 2,000, it was placed in the number 10 position, which made it a finalist. So I'm very proud of that.
Mm.
That book, and it's on Amazon, Signs and Wonders, Sojourn in the Innercity.
There it is. I'll be getting a copy for myself.
Fantastic. That's a huge accomplishment.
Yes, thank you. And then my second book, my children's book, Amelia Disappears, is a combination of nonfiction and some of the myths, some of the stories that I grew up with as a child. That on the tree, the village, you learn about these stories. And so I incorporated some of those stories. So it's fiction. It's
Beautiful.
As a way of grabbing the attention of children across the diaspora from African descent. How does it, resonates with them? It's the story of a little girl growing up with her grandmother, and also finding her voice to advocate on issues of bullyism, because she's speaking up. She's using her grandmother's oils that helped her to disappear and advocate for women who were abused and were in abusive situation. So Amelia Disappears is a very strong book. It's a child encouraging children to speak out. And I'm hoping to use Amelia Disappear in this series. She advocates against bullyism. In another series, I'm hoping that she will advocate for sexuality, for people to be free to love their choice, to have choices in living their truth, regardless of what society is requiring.
Beautiful.
So Amelia Disappears is a story of a little girl who is already speaking out.
Yay.
I'm hoping that the children who reads it will be inspired to speak out against issues that they see that are oppressive.
Beautiful.
That's wonderful. Now, is that available on Amazon as well?
Yes. And excuse me 1 minute. Let me get, sorry. Sorry. I do have Amelia Disappears.
Oh,
beautiful.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Well,
and so there I see you're punky. And in your bio you were spunky.
It's I think it is important. And thank you for using my name. It's not on any of my documents, but it's the name that I tell people you earn the right to call me that, because Punky is the fighter within me. Punky is the name that my grandfather gave me. My father gave me when I was just a toddler. And I grew up with that name. It's the name that best describes me.
I love that.
I love that.
Yeah,
it's so endearing, Punky.
Yes, and I actually love that name. Yeah.
Lovely. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Now, when it comes to, working with women and youth, are there any particular places where you're doing the majority of your work, or, what is something that we could begin to integrate for ourselves with either the children or young people that we work with or women that we work with?
Okay. So over the years, I've worked with different organizations and volunteering capacity, consultancy capacity, or just ordinary managing programs that address issues of empowering women. It's a very important work. It's my passion. It's what drives me as a woman, as I said before, as a woman who is not just but my religion. I'm now a spiritual person, but I identified for any religion that I would identify with, it would be the Rastafarian religion, that advocates for family and your identity as a Black woman. And so my work with these organizations have been intimately pushed by my own passion. As I said before, at the risk of repeating myself, it's working with parents. It begins there in helping women to find their voices, that it's not normal and it should not be accepted, even when society have created and normalized dysfunction. You should not accept it. And to speak out against it. It's how we raise our children. And so for me, the push is to be involved in programs that parenting programs that bring women, and should be, and we should really define parents as not just women who have given birth, but as caregivers.
Absolutely.
And so we include our transgender women. We include all women into that discussion in how do we nurture and guide the children that are in our care to be change agents, so that they always have a voice, so that even when they are still, it's a choice to be still, not because they're shy, not because they don't have a voice, but it's choosing when to speak.
Right.
I like that a lot. I think that's really important work. And as I watch, like, my teenager, who obviously has a voice, but I look at the friends that she hangs out with and how many of them do not feel that they can speak up for themselves. And hopefully we can do things to begin to change that. And I love that you're doing work specifically in that regard. I wrote a children's book. I haven't published it yet.
Okay.
The concept of being unique and special, like everybody else.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think those concepts need to be really drilled in.
Always.
And like say, parents need to get it.
The parents need to get it. The children in the schools, the social work, the interactions that we do, the curriculums should include conversations about giving back and responsibility, the human kindness, the responsibility we have in, I want to use your word, in Shirley, you said it earlier, in values, in valuing each other as spirits that share this space on planet Earth.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and so it must be that teenagers who are going to be the caregivers for another generation understand the importance of that in valuing the spirit. Valuing, because when you value spirit, you really are not caring about how they show up.
Yeah.
That's right.
It is the spirit that you are embracing. And when you embrace spirit, you're able to love and accept. When you don't embrace the spirit, then you are blinded by what society has programmed you to see.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so important, I think, to acknowledge sort of that that unique nature of each and every one of us, and how every person, the 8 billion people on the planet or thereabouts, everyone has a place. Like every person has value. There's something that each person brings that we need to acknowledge, because without anyone, there would be a hole in the mix. Something would be off because one person is missing. So for people to value themselves in that way would be pretty spectacular if we could get that happening.
Yes.
If I love myself, I'm going to be loving and kind to you. I'm not going to be mean to you, right? Like there's that energy of acknowledging my own self and divinity and everything, and then I see that around me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and like Fiona says, I too love the idea of incorporating our children as change agents.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful because I think, that's how we do it on a multi-level system. We can't just address one area, just like because if we don't include the whole, we'll never get to the systemic issues. We'll
Yes.
just be addressing the symptom.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Well, that goes right back to capitalism, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's a little issue.
And the language and the media and all of those things. And that is why the whole picture, we have to always look at the whole picture and understand the role that each sector plays. We talked about the media earlier, how the media is capable of twisting and the language they use.
Mm-hmm.
So examples of that, and step out of Canada and look at BBC in how they would describe Meghan when she did the same thing as the Princess Care, but it was really highlighting the discrepancies that and degrading her for just being Black. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like people have formed an opinion based on what they read and hear, and that's the way it is.
So ignorance is bliss. Because it is ignorance. It's, we're not finding out facts. We're just taking things at face value. Somebody says it's this way, so we go, oh, okay, and we deal with it accordingly.
And I'm included as one of those people. I have to confess, I'm sort of like like there's just too much with Meghan and Harry. It's enough now. But you're right. And so I stopped. In the beginning, I used to read and listen and and then I thought, no, I'm not going to listen to this because it's, again, you don't know what's true, and things are being said and thrown around that are not kind, that are very judgmental, and we haven't heard all sides of the story.
It's true.
Now, we say there's more than two sides, right? There's actually three sides, because it's all about perception, and it's that story of the elephant in the room, right? And you have like 4 or 5 blind men trying to describe the elephant. One's got the trunk, one's got the tail, one's got a foot, one's got an ear. It's all going to be, and that's all, they're all describing a part of the elephant, not the whole elephant.
I always think of truth, there's my truth and your truth, and then there's the truth, which is somewhere in the middle. It's, neither one of us have got it. We just have our perception.
And I even go further. What is the truth, right? Is there such a thing, right? It's because we are so conditioned by what is good, what is bad, what is, so, and you said earlier, Angela, you were saying, what man has constructed, what society has put in place. And that's all of it, and until we recognize that this is a man-made construct. Everything that we do in our lives, the systems that we have are man-made constructs, and they need to change.
Yeah.
And they're based on a binary system. It's like everything is this or that, rather than it's all one. Right? But I love what Fiona put in the chat. Nobody asked the elephant what her truth is. That's really good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's funny, Fiona, because it makes me think of these little what are they called? Something poodles. They bark and they're aggressive and they think they're so much bigger than what they really are.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
They
Any
think they,
little tiny dog.
yeah,
Yes,
exactly. But they behave like they are, invincible, and they're so
yes.
big and scary.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
Very funny. Well, we're getting down to our last 10 minutes. Who could believe this went so fast? What would you like, Angela, to really, sort of put a point on this in a much bigger way? What would you like people to walk away with as they leave this session today?
Thanks again. I want them to really walk away being very conscious of how they have been programmed.
Yeah.
To be very conscious all the time, it's like a reality check, because because of how you're programmed, and which guides your thoughts and guides your action in how you socialize with others, you are sometimes doing things that you're not even aware of, and it is either condescending or insulting. And so and at times when persons like myself who are receiving that, we point it out, then the interpretation is that you're carrying a monkey on your back. You're carrying something and you're always on the defensive. It's not so. It
Right.
is that how persons are programmed when they see someone else that looks different, that they have been society has constructed to be a marginalized or a minority. Be very conscious how you respond to them.
You
Is
know,
it
what I
program or yourself?
Yeah, I love that, Angela, because as I served as a minister in 2 Black churches for 11 years. And of course, coming from a white city and a white family and a white background, of course, I would sometimes say things that weren't quite appropriate. I just didn't know. But I remember saying something once, and as soon as it came out of my mouth, I went, oh, this is not the right place to be saying this. And sure enough, somebody came up to me afterwards and said, Reverend, do you really believe that that was the right thing to say? And I said, absolutely not.
Yes.
And I just left it there. And she was able to go on and tell me about the work she's done for racialized people, how she's served. And I was just really, really grateful. But her and I built this really strong connection immediately because I didn't defend myself and I didn't, try to make it okay. I didn't mean none of that. It was like, you're right. It was just a simple statement. But for her, that I'm sure she felt respected in her opinion as a result of that. So white people everywhere, you're going to step in it. It's okay.
It's okay.
And just know that when somebody has the courtesy to tell you you've stepped in it, thank them.
Yeah.
It's
And
it's
move
okay.
on.
It's okay. A lot of times I find that we should not be walking in so much pins and needles.
I agree.
Fear has held us back from real communication. It's okay to speak up.
Yeah.
Because it is okay to be corrected so that we grow together.
Exactly.
So that we grow together, because things that would appear to be not appropriate are sometimes laughable and teachable moments.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
we don't want pins and needles. Be free.
No.
Yeah.
And I, for one, like, I am grateful if I do, step in some doo-doo and someone tells me, because otherwise how will I know? And I don't want to be doing that again and again and again. I'd rather be, told so that I can think about that and make that change in myself as well. So I really appreciate that. And only by learning, doing some programs and reading and courses and wanting to educate myself more to understand, am
Yeah.
I, only starting to appreciate, what marginalized people have experienced and gone through. And I think for me, Red B, is inviting people to be more
Vulnerable.
yeah, and be vulnerable, but also to be more accountable,
Yes.
to really look at these issues and go a little bit deeper and read a book or two and think about how we are conditioned and where our thoughts, even our belief systems, are conditioned, right? And so to really be curious about, how do I start figuring out myself, what the world is that I want to live in and that I want to construct and be a part of, because that's what we do. We create our reality, whether we know it or not.
Yes, exactly.
And yeah, so there's a lot of undoing, and I say undoing, but it's also, we learn by the poop that we're in, or we step in, or we go through.
Exactly.
That's what makes us who we are.
Yes.
That's what makes us strong. That's what makes us question the things that we question. Because if we didn't go through that, if we didn't feel the yuckiness, the stickiness, the pain, we wouldn't question anything.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I would just really like to encourage people to think about that, and to think about, Fiona says, vulnerable, accountable is loving self-reliance. Absolutely.
Yes.
And when I can do that and feel better about the steps that I am at least trying to make and learn and be a better ally and be, about who I be in this world, the more I can appreciate that about myself, the more I can give voice to others.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes, it's wonderful to have enough awareness to begin. That's why I do so much reading, because I want to know, I want to learn. Doesn't mean I'm not going to step in it again, because I probably will.
We always step in it.
Always. It doesn't
All
matter.
of us together step in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I really believe that love is the answer. And I think one of the questions we can ask ourselves often is, what would love do here? Because I think when we're coming from that place, we're seeking to not do harm, but we're also acknowledging that at some level, we may not know what the right thing is.
Yes.
So we can learn.
Yes.
And there's some great books out there. So hopefully people are going to buy your books. And I think that is a great place to start. I know I'm looking at getting Signs and Wonders, and also Amelia Disappears. I got that right. Looking forward to reading those books. I think the best thing that we can do, each one of us, is to realize that we all have a different experience of life based on how we were raised, where we were raised. Like, you're from South Africa, Cheryl. Angela, are you from Jamaica? Jamaica, yes. And I'm from Calgary, Alberta. And so when you put the three of us together, we have very different backgrounds, very different histories. And yet we're all women who are seeking to create a world that is just for all people. All people.
Yes.
That's the key.
So true.
Include. So, yeah. Thank you, Angela, for being with us today. You are remarkable. I look forward to having you on my Joy show. That's going to be another great conversation. And Cheryl, as always, loving our time together. And our producer today, Michael, thank you for showing up, Reverend Michael. You're the best. And for everybody watching, this is Spirit Cafe show. We're so delighted that you were with us today, and we look forward to having you back again next week. And be sure to like and subscribe and share, and yeah, and go out and buy Angela's books, because those
Yes.
are going to be awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Barbara.
much.
Thank you, Sharon.
Change, change, you can do it. Change, change, it's a sure thing. Change, change, expect a miracle. Change, watch me change when you change the way you look